Hi everyone, my name is Roshanie Appuhamy from IIT. I am following MSc in Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics. Today I am going to present my final research project. As for my final research project, I am providing technical cybersecurity readiness framework for the higher educational virtual learning environment in Sri Lanka. First of all, we have to move to problem background of this research. When we are talking about the problem background of this research, we can say after the rapid spread of the internet in the 1990s, e-learning has spread significantly and has attracted much attention over the last decade in Sri Lanka. Currently, in Sri Lankan education system, there is no proper way to monitor the students' online virtual learning environment. There are several educational cybersecurity issues that students and other educational parties face in a virtual learning environment. According to the modern research papers, it says that the educational sector experienced a 44% increase in cyber attacks during 2022 when compared to 2021. The problem lies in the lack of a comprehensive cybersecurity readiness framework for higher educational virtual learning environments in Sri Lanka. The existing cybersecurity measures may not effectively address the unique challenges faced by educational institutions operating in virtual learning environments. Weaknesses in authentication mechanisms, data protection, incident response capabilities, and resource constraints create vulnerabilities in the virtual learning environment. It recognized the need for a proactive and systematic approach to cybersecurity readiness, considering the unique challenges and context of the educational setting. Now let's move to research gaps of this project. As a first research gap, we have to think about existing research works in this domain. There are so many research done on this area, and also mainly we have to think existing cybersecurity frameworks in this domain. When we are talking about existing cybersecurity frameworks, we can monitor some common limitations in this sector. I can list that common limitations in existing cybersecurity frameworks as a first thing, complexity, second one, resource constraint, third one, adaptation to educational specific risks, and the limited focus on a human factor. I can list as the main limitations in existing cybersecurity frameworks. And also, most of time, many studies focused on the high technical feasibility educational institutions. When we're talking about in Sri Lankan educational setting, we have to make and we have to come up with some common platform. So these are the major research gap in this study. The study of cybersecurity readiness framework for the higher educational learning environment in Sri Lanka is a new area of study, and there are various significant research gaps that may be identified by reviewing existing works. Existing works frequently neglect the specific weaknesses and threats that the virtual learning platforms, online collaboration tools, and remote learning technologies present. This study seeks to address that void by offering observations and recommendations tailored to the virtual learning environment in Sri Lanka. Now let's prioritize the concept map of this research. When we are doing the literature review of this study, it mainly focused on this concept map. Now let's move to project aim. The major aim of this project is to design and develop and evaluate a technological cybersecurity maturity framework for Sri Lankan's virtual learning environment. Now let's talk about the proposed solution. In this proposed solution, the framework stressed the importance of some key components over others and the relationship between them by creating a hierarchy. It makes it possible to install cybersecurity measures in a methodological and ordered manner. Begin with fundamental components and working up to more sophisticated ones. The framework identified technical infrastructure as a fundamental domain that forms the basis for cybersecurity readiness. we have to mainly consider about data security, user awareness, policy and governance, incident response. Now let's talk about the major key components of this research. As the first one, the risk assessment component, the component security rules and procedures, the security infrastructure control component, the security monitoring component, the user awareness and training component, the incident response component are the major key components of this study. Now let's talk about the cybersecurity controls and process. In this process, mainly we have to think about the assess identification in virtual learning sector and the risk assessment. And then after we have to think about framework implementation. This framework implementation topic will be discussed in next slide and also in detail explanations attached in thesis report. And also next we have to think about maturity assessment. When we are talking about this proposed solution, there are major core themes to be considered. As the first one, security information infrastructure. As the second thing, data security governance and standards. As the last thing, we have to think about maturity assessment. In these first two core themes, there are some 8 sub-areas to be considered. In this proposed solution, it has explained phrases to process. As a first phrase, we have to think about critical information access identification, identification of the risk, deployment of the framework accordance with the intended process, assessment of the maturity levels, optimize the deployment, and the monitoring and the regular improvements is the major phrases of this proposed solution. Now let's discuss these core themes in detail. As the first thing, security information infrastructure. This is a major key domain, key component in this conceptual framework. First thing, conduct regular security assessment. Then after, we have to think about implement security controls, physical security controls, secure communication channels and encrypt data, regular update and patch system, educate user on cybersecurity best practices, monitor and analyze logs, establish an incident response plan. Mainly, when we are talking about the information infrastructure, mainly we have to prioritize on educating user. User awareness is the one of the major part of this process. Most of time when we are talking about the existing attack and the most attacks happen based on the users awareness issues and it is come up with the not following best practices by the users of the educational environment. As a second thing, data security governance and standard. In this one, policy and framework, risk assessment and management, access management, access control, incident response and business continuity, and compliance and audit, training and awareness, continuous improvement. We can see these are the major 8 sub-areas coming under second core theme, data security governance and standards. Then after we have to come to maturity assessment. This component of the framework's goal is to evaluate how well the security described in the previous subsection has been put into practice. Here, basically it is thinking and it is focused on the practical level. The goal of evaluating capability maturity criteria are to determine the organization's current degree of technical cybersecurity maturity and to assign restoration measurements of a high level of importance. The institution shall be able to determine the present stage of their adaptation by using the maturity evaluation as a self-tool. In this maturity assessment, there are 3 major stages of development were determined for each regulatory region are discussed here. As a first stage, almost partially performed in accordance with the lowest recommended mitigation 2 controls. As a second stage, possibility of improvement under existing regulations. As a third stage, pay close attention to the suggested guidelines. Always we have to prioritize this stage 3 most of time guidelines are given to the specific parties, but most of time monitoring process is not happen properly in organization. It can be lead very big cybersecurity issues. What frequency should assessment be performed? It is proposed that the company assess maturity every 4 months after incorporation and move forward. Stage 3. The frequency can be changed with the company strategic plan and the leadership support. The main goal of these security frameworks to adopt maturity level 3 as a benchmark standard with the first year of adaptation. It is the main goal of this security framework. Mainly, it proposes benchmark as level 3. Now let's move to evaluation part. In this evaluation, it's basically mainly prioritized on self-evaluation criteria. I can list these self-evaluation criteria as this, as the first one, effectiveness, as the second one, practicality, as the third one, alignment with best practices and standards, as the fourth one, usability, and as the final criteria is scalability. These all criteria are considered as a self-evaluation criteria of this study. Then after, it's basically thinking about the expert evaluation criteria. Here, basically in this research, it considered about overall success of this framework, effectiveness of the framework, alignment with best practices and standards, and the coverage of cybersecurity aspect, and the usability and clarity of this framework. These all evaluation criteria evaluated by domain expert via questionnaires, and it share one video to identify and get the clear idea about the proposed conceptual framework. Here basically now let's move to results of expert evaluations. As a first one, overall success, most evaluators agreed that this framework is overall success. And also when we are talking about effectiveness of this framework, most evaluators agreed that this framework effectiveness is in a good level. And also when we are talking about the alignment with the best practice and standard, most selected answer is which are good alignment, strong alignment. So it indicates that this framework is in a good level of the best practices and the standards. And also coverage of cybersecurity aspect, it's also in a satisfied level in this research, and most experts are vote to the good level, and it indicates that this research and this study framework in a good level. And also usability and clarity, most frequent asked response is usable and clear, and highly usable and clear show that the technical cybersecurity readiness in a well liked for the both its usable and the clarity. Now let's talk about the contribution to the body of knowledge. Expected contribution. The expected contribution of this study is to develop comprehensive technical cybersecurity readiness framework specifically targeted for the higher educational virtual learning environment in Sri Lanka, addressing the unique challenges of educational institutions by enhancing their cybersecurity posture. Final contribution. The final contribution of this study is a strong and aligned technical cybersecurity readiness framework validated for its effectiveness, practicality, usability, scalability, and the compliance with the international standard, which is expected to significantly improve the cybersecurity readiness of higher educational institutions in Sri Lanka. When I come up with this research, I have faced some problems and challenges when I'm doing this research. Here I listed it as a table. As the first thing is limited data availability. Actually, to overcome this problem, I make partnership and the collaboration with some educational institutions and gain access to the relevant data. As a major thing, time constraints. With the work balance, it's very hard to manage all the work. To manage this problem, I use work breakdown structure and the Gantt chart. And also access to expert is one of the major challenge. When I'm talking about my research, it is specifically for education domain, and also when I'm searching expert people for this evaluation process, I have to find persons who are expert in education domain as well as in the cybersecurity domain. So it was one of the major challenge, but to overcome that issue, I used flexible scheduling, interview plans, and other stuff to overcome that issue. Then after research scope, mainly to overcome this issue, I use concept map to execute the research, and also on the other side, I got my supervisor's help to overcome this matter. Now I will talk about the novelty of this research. The novelty of this research lies in the development of a specialized cybersecurity readiness framework designed clearly for the educational virtual learning environment in Sri Lanka. The framework takes into account the specific challenges and requirements faced by educational institutions, providing practical guidelines and best practice to enhance cybersecurity readiness. Additionally, the security validates the framework's alignment with internationally recognized standards and best practices, making it a novel and valuable contribution to field of cybersecurity in the context of higher education in Sri Lanka. When we are talking about the novelty of this research, first thing is problem definition and scope. Novelty in cybersecurity research begins with the identify emerging threats, vulnerabilities, or gaps in the existing security landscape. Researchers seek to define new problem or expand the scope of existing one, thereby generating new avenues of exploration. And also in this research, as a novelty, I can mention theoretical framework. In this research, it is introducing novel theoretical concept and adapting existing theory from other disciplines to be field of cybersecurity can enhance the understanding of the security. Basically, in this research, it adapts some existing theoretical concept to new domain with the new discipline. Now, I'm talking about the limitations and the future work of this study. Main limitation of this study is, in this study, it mainly focused on the virtual learning environment. So when we are come up to the education institutes, most of time we have to think about the on-premises cybersecurity countermeasures. Also, in this research, it's talk about that area, but very less. So it is one of the major limitation in this research. And also, when we are talking about the future enhancement, the technical cybersecurity readiness framework for the higher educational virtual learning environment in Sri Lanka should prioritize continuous monitoring and update to remain the relevant, effective in the face of evolving cyber threat. And also, when we are talking about this research, additionally, we can adapt and integrate new emerging technologies to this research, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the IoT in future. By embracing this initiative and the framework can evolve to meet the dynamic cybersecurity landscape and maintain its main root causes in the safeguarding educational institution against ever-changing cyber risk. Now let's move to conclusion of this research. Mainly, when I'm doing this research, I used my existing skills. I have a bachelor's in computer networks. I use that computer networks knowledge to understand the cybersecurity threats and the cybersecurity attacks in the network systems in a virtual education system. And also I have done postgraduate diploma in business analytics. It helped me to create questionnaires and data gathering part very well. And also it helped me to conduct interviews and the data collecting part. And also education domain knowledge and experience. Personally, I'm a professional who is engaging in the education sector. So I have a good knowledge in live education sector, and I know what are the issues students and the academic people are facing in academic environment. So that experience and knowledge I used in this my research. And also I am a certified ethical hacker. So that cybersecurity knowledge helped me to create guidelines and the conceptual framework. And also I have a good communication skills. It helped me to conduct meetings and interviews very well. And also I have a good time management skills. With the work balance, I balance this all stuff, and I completed this research on time. So my time management skill helped me to overcome that all issues which related to time constraint and other all stuff. And also via this research, I have gained new skills to my academic life as well as my personal life. First thing is documentation and technical writing. I improved via this research, and also practical application of cybersecurity concepts. In this research, I mainly focused about existing cybersecurity frameworks. So via that, I learned about international standards and the existing international cybersecurity frameworks and its usages. And also I learned about research methodologies, and also my analytical skills also trained very well. This is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening.